welcome back to the Constitutional Clarion. Now, what colour is the Constitution? I'm not talking here about some kind of synesthesia where someone might see the Constitution or its various provisions in different colours, although frankly that would be quite interesting. Instead, I'm talking about a claim that's been made quite often recently on social media about there being two constitutions and asking which constitution does the Voice referendum propose to change? Is it the green, corporate, fraudulent constitution, or is it the red, imperial, true constitution? Now, this is all quite mysterious, frankly, for a constitutional lawyer. So in order to explain what I mean, I'm going to have to show you some of the photos attached to these particular claims. Now, this one, you'll see, says 1901 Constitution. Always ask which 1901 they are referring to. The living imperial Anzac Constitution, which has never been changed, or the green, dead, legal, corporate thing that they used, plagiarised, altered as they wished to give us communism, politics, citizenship. Okay, now just by the by here that the whole thing about plagiarism is quite interesting when it comes to constitutions because, of course, constitutions borrow provisions from other constitutions, and yes, our constitution is actually fair bit plagiarised from the United States Constitution in particular, although it's not really plagiarism to the extent that it's acknowledged that that's where the words come from. And the reason you do that is so that you can at least have some jurisprudence that exists already about how those provisions are interpreted in order to rely on them. So let's just ignore the thing about plagiarism at the moment, because that's actually not a problem when it comes to constitutions. But what about the rest of it? Now, if you actually look at the photos of what they're claiming about the red and the green constitution, you'll see that actually it's not the constitution themselves that they're referring to. It's an annotated constitution written by John Quick and Robert Garran that was published back in 1901. So an annotated constitution is one that sets out provisions of the Constitution and explains. And in this case, it goes and explains the constitutional history, the drafting history of each of those provisions, where it came from, how it was changed in the various convention debates, and it gives some kind of an interpretation of how they expected it to be interpreted. They, of course, had no High Court jurisprudence because the High Court didn't exist before the Constitution. It was made by the Constitution. So they referred to a lot of US jurisprudence simply because, by the way, we did plagiarise quite a few provisions from the US Constitution. So that's Quick and Garran's 1901 volume is still a terrific piece of work for people to look at what was originally intended at the time that the Constitution was written. Now let's look a bit more at these claims to see what they're talking about. Here's another one. It says, we have had the green fraud since the beginning. They say 1901 Constitution, but never say what they mean. De facto legal corporate green one or the de jure imperial red one that the people voted on. They ignore the red. They always have, except to dupe and butcher it with parties. Now, this allegation, based on the colour of the cover of Quick and Garran, pops up quite a lot in the internet and people's comments on various things ranging from the Voice to other constitutional issues. So let me give you a few more examples. Here's one that says, you are obviously using the corporate constitution green book. Now try the Commonwealth Constitution, the red book. Very different books. Or another one, I don't know what you have read, but we have been run by a foreign corporation for a long time. The 1901 Constitution in the red binder has been usurped by the corporate constitution in the green binder. Maybe do some homework and you can then write an honest article. And then finally this one. Now that applies to all ministers under our Constitution. Try reading the red book, not the corporate green book. Education is the key. Well, I agree that education is the key and that we should do our homework. So let's do a little bit of homework and get a little bit of education and actually look at these books with their different covers and see what is actually in them. Mine is perhaps a rather weird family. You've often heard of a 3-car family. Well, mine is a family that has no cars, but 3 Quicken Garrans, which frankly I find more valuable and useful than a car. All right, so the first Quicken Garran I ever acquired was this one. Let me show you that there. So this is the one that they say is the red one in all the various photographs. It's actually more of sort of a maroon colour. And this one I bought when I first became an academic in my very first year, using my University of Sydney's allowance to buy it. Now it's actually a reprint. It's not a first edition. So if you look in here, you can see, hopefully at the bottom, that it's a reprint by Legal Books from 1995, this one. Okay, so the red one they're referring to, actually a 1995 reprint. Now, I concede that I did covet the idea of having a first edition Quicken Garran, and I used to scour secondhand bookstores hoping that in some dusty corner somewhere there would be a neglected bargain of a Quicken Garran. Unfortunately, that was never to be. Never did I have the great eureka moment of finding one. However, upon hearing of my misfortune in this regard, the rather wonderful Justice John Sacker decided that I should be the recipient of an original first edition Quicken Garran and gave me this one. So this is the real deal. This is a genuine first edition Quicken Garran from 1901. And you'll see that its colour, apart from that weird bit of paint on it, is a sort of a murky brown. It's been a bit faded here because of sunlight on it, but that's the original colour, which is brown. And you can see inside on the front page that it is the original deal from 1901. Someone's actually signed it up here when they got it in 1901. I've never been able to work out whose signature it is, so if anyone knows, do let me know. So that's my 1901 Quicken Garran, but not only do I have those two, but I have a husband, and he has a Quicken Garran too, and he has the evil green one. Okay, so this is the green Quicken Garran, and that people are so worried about. And if you look in the opening pages, it again is a reprint. And this one comes from 1976. Now, by now you'll have probably figured out that the one that's lauded by people on the internet as being the one true one, which in the photos is this one, is actually the most recent of the three. Okay, so this is the one from the 1990s that people seem to think is the original one, not the real one, which was the original one in brown, and this one came in the 1970s. Now, the only difference between any of these three volumes is that the one in the 1970s got a foreword done by Geoffrey Saw, so it's got a 2-page extra bit in it, and the more recent one, the red one as they call it, has 2 forewords in it, one by Sir Maurice Byers as well as the one by Geoffrey Saw, and that's the only difference between them. Is there some kind of corporate fraudulent plagiarised whatever in the green one? No, actually, page per page, they are exactly the same. So let me show you that in case you are not convinced that they're exactly the same. So I have chosen a random page and I'm going to show you that they are exactly the same. So here's my random page. It's page 407. And if you can see there, you can see there's a heading about prorogue, so proroguing Parliament, and one about dissolution, okay? And that's the bit where it talks about Section 5 of the Constitution and the power to prorogue and dissolve, okay? So that's original 1901 job. All right, then let's go to Evil Green, 1970s version. And we get on page 407, oh, exactly the same page because it is exactly the same content. So we've got prorogue and dissolve, so exactly the same. And just to top it all off, if we go to this one and we go to 1990s version, page 407, oh yes, it says again exactly the same thing. It has prorogue and dissolve, and indeed the entirety of the text apart from those forewords is exactly the same. Now there is a slight complication. There is an even more recent version which is published by Lexus Nexus, and it's got a green cover and it has the words revised edition on it, and this has provoked a lot of angst. So you can see here where someone asks, which constitution will the voice amend? The red 1901 has the Commonwealth of Australia on the front, and Labor's usurped green 1973 without a referendum as the Australian Commonwealth revised edition. Who revised it and with whose authority? Okay, so the first point to make here is actually the one that's the dodgy one is the one with the red binding. That's not original binding for a Quick and Garran, so it must have been a version held by a library. It got tatty in the library and the library has recovered it with a red version. So just to remind you what these ones all look like, every single original Quick and Garran, and all the others as well, has this flat stuff on the front, no words at all. Okay, so you've got your name, etc. on the spine, but you've got nothing there. Okay. Oh, at this point, by the way, I thought I should also mention that my colleague, Helen Irving, she owns a Quick and Garran as well. Hers was owned by one of the original people at the Constitutional Conventions, J.T. Walker, and she kindly sent me copies of hers when I requested as well to find out whether hers has the same brown cover, and yes, it does. And her brown cover, you can see pictures here with the spine and the front page. Again, there's nothing actually written on the face of the cover, which suggests that this red version is the fake version. And you can also see by the little symbol there with the scales that this is something probably done by a law library with their own little symbol on it. Now, as for the green version with revised edition on it, I don't actually own one of those. It may be a bit excessive for a family to have 4 Quick and Garrans, but in the spirit of doing one's homework and educating oneself, I made the trip all the way into the State Library today to have a look at their green revised edition of Quick and Garran. And this is what I found. First, it's a 2015 edition, not 1973. Second, no revision was actually made to Quick and Garran's text itself. Instead, they added in some extra stuff. So they put in some other numbers, etc., to make it easier to find things. They added an additional index as well to do that. The original page numbers are actually still preserved in green, so you know where the original page numbers start and finish. They also added a table of more recent High Court decisions that actually cite various pages and parts of Quick and Garran, so you can know where something that you're looking at has been cited in the High Court. And finally, they added an updated version of the Constitution at the end, which contains the 8 changes that have been made by referendum since 1901. And you can see here a page that includes section 5123A, which was a change that was made back in the 1940s to give to allow the Commonwealth to make laws about unemployment benefits, medical benefits, benefits to students, etc. And also the change made in 1967, which struck out the words other than the Aboriginal race in any state. And finally, to confirm that the Quick and Garran contents remain exactly the same, here is page 407, which says exactly the same thing about prorogation and dissolution. Now, the bottom line is that Quick and Garran is an annotated constitution. And the reason that you use it is to go back to see what people thought various provisions of the Constitution might have meant in 1901. Of course, since then, the Constitution has been amended 8 times, but not only that, we've now got a whole lot of High Court jurisprudence, which can replace all the US jurisprudence that Quick and Garran had to rely on because they didn't have anything else to use. So if today you were looking for an annotated constitution that gave you more recent material to look at, you'd look at something else. So here are some examples. So the most up-to-date one is the one by Lum, Mowens and Trone. So that's an annotated constitution, and that will give you various cases and changes, etc., that have been made since. It's not green and it's not evil. And if you want one that's a bit more detailed, although it is older, have a look at Lane's commentary on the Australian Constitution. It's excellent as an annotated constitution. It gives you a lot more detail, but unfortunately that's the most recent edition of it, and it is a little bit old now. Finally, an annotated constitution isn't actually the constitution itself. It just takes all the bits of the constitution and then gives a commentary on them. If you want to see the size of the constitution, here's my version of the constitution that I bought as a student in the 1980s when I was at law school. And as you can tell, it's this thick, right? It's actually quite thin. It's not a huge amount of it. It's quite different from Quick and Garran's rather hefty tome, which is a lot thicker, as you can see there, the difference. Okay, so the Constitution is not any of those, regardless of the colour of its cover. And by the way, the one I bought back here was this sort of a grey blue colour. Used to get other blue ones since. It's not even green, so there you go. Well, unless you count that one's green. So, it turns out that the old adage is true. You can't judge a book by its cover, or indeed the colour of its cover. Best, I think, is to actually read the words within it. And the answer to all of this is that, no, the Constitution hasn't been turned into some strange corporate thing with a whole lot of different words in it. There were no sneaky amendments made in 1973 at all. And really, you should be talking about things that are actually true and accurate. And if you want to talk about people educating themselves and going and doing their homework, well, golly gosh, try doing it yourself, as I've done here. So, thank you for watching the Constitutional Clarion, and I hope you join me again next time. Goodbye.